So one of the seismic shifts that's happened in the economy this year is that a lot of people are starting to work from home, and they're starting their own home-based business. And if you doubt that, go and try to buy a microphone. Go and try to buy an online camera for your computer. You're going to have to wait a little bit. A lot of people are getting into this online training and various home-based businesses. And because of that, the world's changing a little bit. So I do consultations with people about dietary supplements where essentially they'll reach out to me and they'll say, hey, what do you think about this supplement? Or do you think I should be taking another supplement? Or what's the active ingredient in this supplement? So it's kind of fun because I get to see a whole lot of different dietary supplements. But this week I had an interesting consult with a woman. She wasn't interested particularly in a dietary supplement. Rather, she was interested in a home-based business model called multi-level marketing and whether or not she should get into it. Hey, I want to welcome you to Joe Cannon Health Podcast. I am exercise physiologist Joe Cannon. Each week, we're going to talk about different topics related to health and wellness. No hype, no spin, no testimonials, just the facts in plain English. And that's what I'm going to endeavor to do this week. Multi-level marketing, sometimes called MLM, sometimes called network marketing or relationship marketing, by whatever name you call it, it's been around for a long, long time, and it's something that maybe people have asked you to become involved with. Now, if you've never heard of network marketing before, a lot of companies do it, by the way. And so in some circles, network marketing gets a bit of a bad reputation, but some of the biggest names out there do it. For instance, Avon, multi-level marketing. Tupperware, same thing. And Amway, which is probably one of the biggest, definitely one of the oldest network marketing companies out there. But there's a lot of companies, and a lot of dietary supplements are sold through network marketing as well. I've reviewed several of them over the years on my Supplement Clarity website. And I know that a popular, I'll say derogatory term for MLM is pyramid scheme. That's something I'm sure you've probably heard of before. And I get the analogy of pyramid scheme. The analogy is that people at the top of the pyramid make most of the money, then those people at the bottom of the pyramid. So in other words, if you got in at the ground floor, maybe at the start of the business, you might have a better chance of making a lot of money than those who came in at the end of the business. That said, I'm not going to call it a pyramid scheme because I don't think that adds to the conversation. And for the record, I'm not for or against multi-level marketing. I've met people who've done it over the years. They've told me they do very well with multi-level marketing, and that's great. I'm really happy for them. Also, for the record, I want to be upfront and tell you, I do not work for any multi-level marketing company. I'm not associated with any of them. My goal with everything I write and these podcasts is to give you an unbiased look at things so you can make a more informed decision for yourself. In keeping with that philosophy, if you're considering about this home-based business opportunity, they sometimes call it an opportunity of multi-level marketing, try to make some extra money on the side, or maybe even replace your current income with what you might make through this business model, what I want to do in this episode is give you a series of questions that you should ask the company or the person who's recruiting you, but also some questions that you should be asking yourself. If you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And in turn, this can give you a better idea if multi-level marketing business model is right for you. First question I would have you ask the person who may or is trying to recruit you. And that's usually how multi-level marketing happens. You may come in contact with somebody, they tell you about the product, and they want to maybe recruit you as a distributor for the product. And the product could be anything. It could be Tupperware, it could be a supplement, whatever. I think that one of the very first questions you should ask the person or the company is, how much does it cost to be involved with the company itself? Again, the way it usually works is this. Before someone can get involved as a network marketing distributor, you usually have to pay an upfront fee. It's usually maybe called a distributor fee or an associate fee or a brand ambassador fee, whatever they want to call it. It's an upfront fee, and it's usually either a lifetime fee or maybe it's a yearly fee. Different companies have different ways of doing this. Generally, the fee that I've seen over the years looking at different companies, it's around anywhere from like 25 to 50 bucks to get started. Again, it varies. I see $49 a lot, but so it's not super a lot of money, but it is something to consider. So if you're going to be doing this, ask yourself, does that initiation fee, distributor fee, does that fit within your budget? That's the first thing. In addition to the distributor fee, there may be additional fees that the company may charge you depending on what you want. For instance, do you want your own branded website? Yeah. Companies will sometimes they'll put together a website, make it look like it's your website. They'll do all that work for you. They'll provide you with business cards. There may even be a starter kit where you get samples of the product that you can pass out to your friends and family. All that's going to have additional fees. And so if you want to do that, again, you need to ask, what are those fees and are you comfortable with those fees? That's the first thing I would point out to you. And I want to caution people, do not go into credit card debt to get involved with this. Save up the money first. If this is something you're serious about, save up first. Do not put on a credit card that you can't pay off at the end of the month. That, I think, is a good rule of life in general for everything. I'm always a big fan of not going into credit card debt. You definitely don't want to keep paying those bills over and over again. Not a good scene. I've been there in the past, and I don't like the feeling. I don't like to owe people anything, and I definitely don't like having bills that are out there that I have to pay. So I would encourage you, do not go into credit card debt. Save up the money first if this is something you're serious about. The next thing I would suggest you ask is, do you have to buy the product up front before you start selling it? I honestly don't think a lot of companies do this anymore, but you always want to ask about it. I've heard of companies that require the distributors, ambassadors, whatever, to buy the products you're selling up front first, and they get them at a discount, by the way. You don't pay full price. You get them at a discount, but you are then on the hook for selling those products to other people. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good business model for most people. Think about it. What happens? What happens if you can't sell that product? What happens if you can't sell that product, that supplement? You're stuck with it. You're stuck with it. So again, fortunately, I don't think a lot of companies do this anymore. I have heard of some that may do it, and it wouldn't be for me, but again, other people may think differently, but I'm not a big fan of having to buy things up front and stockpiling it myself. And again, that just puts the onus on me to work harder down the road. So again, most companies don't do this anymore, but always ask first if you have to buy that product up front. I don't think that people will say yes. The way it usually works with most companies is you take the orders from your customers and then you send the order to the company, through a web portal or email or maybe even fax, if anybody faxes anymore. And then they in turn fulfill the orders. They send the product out to the customers. That's how it usually works. But just on the off chance that you may run into some out there, they'll say, yeah, you have to buy X amount of product up front and then you got to sell it. That's, for me, that's a big red flag, and I would not be involved or interested in any company like that. But that's a question to ask. Third question that I would suggest you ask the company or whoever's trying to recruit you is, how long has the company been in business? How long they've been around? There are some pros and cons to this, but I want to give you both sides to this story. So companies that have been around for a long time, in theory, might be more reputable than, say, companies that are just coming on the market right out of the blue. No guarantee to this, okay? But the theory is, maybe in my mind at least, that a company has been around a long time, has built a reputation, and they're maybe more likely to do the right thing for their brand ambassadors. Again, in theory, we're talking theory here. On the flip side, however, newer companies that are just coming on the market, they may have fewer brand ambassadors, fewer distributors. Remember, getting in on the ground floor of some of these companies might actually make you more money in the long run as more people are recruited. Remember, this is network marketing we're talking about here. In the world of multi-level marketing, you also make money when distributors who are under you in the pyramid, so to speak, I don't want to use that word pyramid, but people who come in under you, they make sales, you make money on those sales. This means that it's not just the sales that you make that are generating income, it's the sales of all the other people you recruit under you as well. And you probably might even get a bonus if you say recruit new people to become distributors under you. This is why a lot of people gravitate towards multi-level marketing. There is that ability, in theory at least, to have your own business with employees. I'm making some air quotes here as I say this, employees who make an income for you through the sales that they generate. So I get this business model. You recruit employees, they make sales for you, you make an income on their sales as well as the sales that you make. If you get in on the ground floor of this, well, then you potentially could make a lot of money. So you, the budding entrepreneur that is listening to me, you have to weigh, is the company new? And if so, you might be able to get on the ground floor, or maybe going with a more established company that's been around a long time, might have more resources for those distributors to help educate them in the long run. Again, there's no perfect answer here, but I think it's a question to ask. You don't want to, for instance, get involved with a company. And again, I've never heard of this happening, but you get involved with a company and then, less than a year later, they're out of business. And then, you're up a creek. So there's pros and cons to all this. And again, I have no easy answers for you, but I think this is a good question to ask nonetheless. Another question that I think is really important is, how many other distributors are out there? How many other brand ambassadors are out there doing the same thing that you would be doing, trying to sell that product, trying to sell that supplement? Remember, these other ambassadors, they're your competition. They're your competition. So if there are tens of thousands of people also selling the same darn product as you are, it may mean that the market might be saturated and you might have less of a chance of, say, selling the product or even signing up new distributors under you. That could be something to consider. Now, on the other hand, seeing lots of distributors might also mean the product, the supplement, is popular, in which case that might be good for you. Again, no easy answers out here on this topic, but I do think you need to know how many other people out there selling the product, because again, they're your competition. And that's, again, really good information for you to know. Related to that, another question that I suggest you ask, and this is a very important question, how many actual customers are out there buying that product? So what's a customer? A customer is somebody who is not a distributor who is buying that product. I'll say that again because this is a really important question. A customer is someone who buys a product who is not also a distributor. If there are more customers than distributors, ambassadors, then that's a good sign. That's a really good sign. It means the product is popular and it has a lot of people interested in it. And in theory, that means you might be able to make some money selling that product. On the other hand, if there are more distributors buying the product than actual customers, that, in my opinion, is a red flag. Remember, distributors, ambassadors, whatever you want to call them, these individuals get discounts when they buy the products for their own personal use. They get discounts. Some people might become a distributor of the product only to get the discount. They're not interested in selling. They're not interested in recruiting other people. They're only interested in getting the discount for their own personal use. So think about it. If most of the sales of this product that you're interested in are coming from people who are distributors, that might mean the product, the supplement, whatever, isn't as popular as people are saying. The stuff purchased by distributors is actually artificially inflating how popular the product is. So what you want to do here is you want to compare the number of distributors to the number of actual customers. Again, those actual customers are the people buying the product who are not associated with the company. In my opinion, this is one of the most important questions to ask. Sometimes sales figures could be inflated because of the sales that are being generated through the pseudo customers, the ambassadors who only care about using them for themselves. We are only interested in the actual customer sales. So you really want to know the answer to this question. How many customers are there and how many distributors are out there? I have, without naming names, I've encountered several people over the years who work for various multi-level marketing companies, and they all tell me the same thing. Not everybody, but enough of them out there have said to me, I only became a distributor to get the discount. And again, not naming names, but these are some pretty popular companies, which again is a red flag in my book. An equally important question that you want to be asking the person recruiting you or the company is, how much does the average distributor ambassador make each month? And you really want to ask about the average, because that's going to give you at least a rough estimate of how much you might make per month selling that product. If you look on, say, different websites, I don't know, social media, etc., you're going to see all kinds of tales of people who are claiming to make lots and lots of money, and, they're driving fancy cars and all this stuff. Well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Or maybe they're an outlier. Maybe they're somebody who is working day and night to sell that product. That's great. That's wonderful. But what's the average person making who's selling this product? Again, let's assume that you're going to be the average person. If you, again, don't aim too high, you may not be disappointed with what you might make per month. Companies know how much the average distributor makes per month. This, again, they wouldn't be in business if they didn't know this information. So that information is available, and I suggest you ask about that. And then once you know that information, then you say to yourself, is that average amount per month worth your time, worth your energy, worth your investment of, say, being a distributor? Again, that's a question each of us has to answer for him or herself. When I investigate a dietary supplement, one of the things that I always do is, especially when it's a company, I'm going to go to the Better Business Bureau and I want to see what their Better Business Bureau rating is. I want to see what other people are saying about it. And so I always link to the Better Business Bureau files of a company when I investigate a various dietary supplement. And I would say if you want to be a multi-level marketer of some company, that you might also want to go to the Better Business Bureau and see what they have to say about that company. And if you've never done this before, pretty easy to do. Basically just get on your search engine of choice and type in, say, BBB, Better Business Bureau, and the name of the company you're interested in. So if you're interested in company X, you'd go on the internet, you type in BBB, company X. That is most likely going to bring up the file of the Better Business Bureau on that company. From there, you can see if it's got a rating of A plus, B, C, D, whatever. You can also see any complaints people have made about the company. And also, occasionally, the Better Business Bureau will also throw up alerts. Sometimes companies may, get involved with some snafus with the FDA or the FTC, and they'll sometimes show up on the Better Business Bureau. And you could read what maybe the governmental agencies are saying, and that's something to consider. But I also like to look at the complaints about the product. If there are any complaints, there may not be. But if there are, one thing the Better Business Bureau will do is they'll subdivide those complaints into different categories, where people mostly complaining about the delivery of the product or the quality of the product or the price of the product, whatever, or not getting it in time. And then also, many times the companies themselves will respond to the people making complaints. I like to see that. For me, that's a good sign. When I see a company responding to the complaints and responding in a good way, then that tells me that's a good company. If I see a lot of people complaining and nobody is responding, that's not necessarily a good sign in my book. And I don't want you to get the idea that simply having complaints with the Better Business Bureau is a bad thing. Think about it. If you've got a product and there are millions of people taking that product or using that product, there's bound to be complaints. You can't please everybody. So look at those complaints, read through them. Some of them are quite detailed, and ask yourself, is that a frivolous thing or is that a legitimate question to ask? A legitimate complaint? Again, we all have to weigh these for ourselves. I've looked through some of these complaints over the years, and I sometimes shake my head at why they're making a complaint. It seems like it's a no-brainer to me, and then the company representative will write back and usually give them a refund or whatever it is they're looking for. But that is something I think is a great first step, looking at what the Better Business Bureau says. And I know out there are people who say, oh, Better Business Bureau, yada, yada, yada. They've got kind of this love-hate relationship with people. It's information. Use that information to your use. And so that's one of the reasons that I like it. The next question I would suggest you ask of, say, the company or the representative, and this gets a little technical, but you're basically going to ask, does it have any proof that it actually works? And this is really, really important when it comes to dietary supplements, weight loss supplements, supplements that are going to make your hair grow, I don't know, whatever, raise your testosterone level, help you live longer, whatever. They make a lot of claims. And claims are great, but is there any evidence, any scientific evidence that the thing really works as it's being claimed to work? So how do you know? Basically, I would suggest you go to the company or go to the person who's recruiting you and ask them this simple question. Does the supplement have any peer-reviewed human studies that prove it works? Let me say that again. Does the supplement have any peer-reviewed human clinical evidence studies that prove it actually works? Say it just like that. Does the supplement have any peer-reviewed human studies that show it actually works? I chose my words real carefully in that sentence, if you've noticed. Does the supplement have any peer-reviewed human studies that show it works? Peer-reviewed human studies. Now, if you've never heard peer-reviewed before, what does that mean? A peer-reviewed clinical study is a clinical investigation that was first reviewed by other competent scientists, the peers, if you will, before it was allowed to be published in a medical nutrition scientific journal. Okay, the peer review process essentially adds an extra layer of confidence sometimes that the study was done properly, because the scientists who did the study, they have to basically show all their work to these other scientists, and then the other scientists look through the study and they make sure they dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and then they'll even send them back questions. Oh, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about that. And then the original researchers have to resubmit it. And it's a fairly in-depth, detailed process to get a peer-reviewed study published in a, say, a nutrition journal or a medical journal or something like that. Peer review process, not perfect, but it does add some credibility to the scientific study, in my opinion. And I also made a point of saying human clinical studies. It is possible that the supplement, say, in question may have clinical proof, but maybe that clinical evidence involves mice or rats or isolated cells in a test tube. I tend to call those test tube studies. But personally, I tend to view those as less important because, let's face it, you're not a mouse. You're not a rat. Hope you're not. You're definitely not a clump of cells sitting in a petri dish. And so those investigations, I look at them, I say they're interesting sometimes, but since we are humans, human beings, we actually should look for human studies, okay? Preferably people who reflect us. So for instance, if you're looking for, say, a menopause supplement, you don't want to see studies that use men, for instance, because that's useless, right? So you ideally want a supplement that reflects who the person who's intended to use the supplement is. For instance, I've seen supplements out there that, are touted to, say, help older people in their 70s, but when you look at the research, it sometimes involves people in their 20s. People in their 20s, people in their 70s, they're different. So again, it gets a little convoluted when it comes to the studies, but the first step in figuring this out is ask them if they have any peer-reviewed human clinical studies. And again, once you get those studies, ask for them. Don't just say, yeah, we got them. Ask to see them. Have them email you these studies, okay? Right off the bat, if you've never seen a clinical study before, okay, you're going to have a rude awakening. They're boring as dirt. I'm not kidding. Scientific studies are about as interesting as watching the grass grow. Actually, I should say paint peel, because watching the grass grow is at least a little bit more interesting. Rabbits walk by, maybe you see a deer, whatever. But scientific studies are boring. They got lots and lots of big 3 to 5 syllable words. They're big, long sentences, and they usually got a lot of numbers that you have to make sense of. So, if you're faced with these clinical studies, here's what I would suggest. What you're going to get is what's called the summary of the study. It's usually called the abstract. It's a summary. Okay, look at the last 2 to 3 sentences of that study, the last 2 to 3 sentences, because it's my opinion, after reading thousands of studies in my life so far, many thousands, the last 2 or 3 sentences is where you're going to get the conclusions. The conclusions are what they found. And if you see enough studies, enough of these clinical studies all saying the same thing, well, then that's a good sign. So get the studies, look at the last 2 to 3 sentences, see if you can find a consensus in terms of what they're finding. A little kind of insider information when it comes to the clinical studies is sometimes these studies are sponsored by the company themselves. Say, if you're interested in supplement X, maybe the company that makes supplement X sponsored the study. So one thing I tend to do is I tend to scroll all the way to the bottom of the study, and I look for what's called the conflict of interest, where they'll tell you, if the people who did the study worked for the company or not. That could be a conflict of interest, not always, but generally speaking, I personally won't discount a study that's sponsored by the company. I won't do that because for me, I look at it this way. If the company is willing to invest the time and money into studying their own product, their own supplement, I like that. A lot of companies don't. I got news for you. I've looked at thousands of studies over the last 25 years or so, and I can tell you a lot of companies just don't do that. So I like it when a company will invest the time and money and to study a supplement. I don't necessarily think company sponsored studies are bad. What I do, on the other hand, look for is I want to make sure the company themselves did not take any direct part of the study. For instance, I don't want to see them doing the experiment and analyzing the statistics and all that stuff because, in theory, there could be a little bit of bias in there, whether it's conscious or even unconscious. And that's why it's good to have a third-party company do that. If the company wants to supply the supplements or give them a grant, I'm okay with that. Because in the real world, I know the supplement companies sometimes get slammed by people, oh, you sponsored the research. Let's take a step back. You see all these drugs advertised on TV? It's the pharmaceutical company that actually did the research on those drugs. I don't see a lot of people throwing big pharma under the bus when it comes to sponsoring their own research and conducting their own studies. So because of that, I'm not going to throw any supplement company under the bus that's going to do that as well. As long as it's a well-done study, like a placebo-controlled study, let's take supplement X, compare it to a placebo to see what differences there are, and they didn't take any direct part in the study, I'm good with that. So that's how I would suggest you analyze the study. First, find out if it's got some human research on it. If you can get those studies, great. Read the last 2 or 3 sentences. If there's multiple studies, see if the last 2 or 3 sentences are all basically saying the same thing. Like, for instance, they might say, our supplement lowered cholesterol, lowered bad cholesterol, raised testosterone, whatever. If you see a consensus, that's a good thing. The other thing that I would suggest, and this is something I actually mentioned to the person that I was consulting with, and we actually did this we did this. We were on the computer to each other. I basically pulled them up on my computer, and I wanted to see if they had any contact information. Is there a phone number that you can call and you can talk to a human being? And if the answer is yes, there is a phone number, I would suggest you call that number and see what it's like to contact the company. How easy is it to contact that company if you have questions? Again, it's really important because think about it. Maybe you might one day be a network marketer. You're selling a supplement. Somebody has listened to this podcast and is asking you some of these questions. How do you answer them? Well, you may not know all the answers right off the top of your head, but wouldn't it be nice if you can contact the company and ask them yourselves? Something to think about. As a rule, I'm not a big fan of companies that don't have any contact information or even email support. I like to talk to a human being, where it's never been easier these days to talk to a human being. And so that's why I would go with a company that actually has people who live in the country, who are not offshore to a different country. It's basically a call center. I like people who work for an actual company, who's familiar with the product, who can either answer your question right there or funnel you to the correct person who can answer your questions. And I do know those companies are out there. I know that because, again, I've investigated a lot of these companies. I call them myself sometimes with questions. And I've actually dealt with some pretty good companies. Either they'll tell me right off the bat the answers to my questions, or they will connect me directly with sometimes the actual scientists who did the studies themselves. I'm always glad to see companies doing things the right way. And so that's why I would suggest looking for a contact number. The other thing I'd throw out to you if you're considering network marketing, again, I've said it over this episode that, you may be approached by somebody, maybe you ran to them at Starbucks or Panera or something like that, or who knows, maybe they're a friend. But who is the person who's recruiting you? Think about that. Who is that person? Is it a friend or a relative that you know and trust who's been using the product? But what if you don't know the person? What if you're just sitting there at, Starbucks one day and, the person next to you just strikes up a conversation and, 15 minutes later, they're telling you about this great product that they're involved with. You don't know who they are. Okay. You just met them. So what I would suggest you do is, nod politely, smile, ask them for whatever information they might have, and then get their card. When you get home at your own leisure, look them up on the internet. Look up that person's name on the internet. Let's see what you see about them. Do you see a lot of stuff that you feel good with? I mean, they're doing X, Y, and Z, and you're like, oh, that's really great stuff. Do you see that same person associated with lots and lots and lots of multi-level marketing companies? Sometimes people jump from business to business to business. They're kind of like serial multi-level marketers. For me, that wouldn't be a good sign, but they're, not necessarily, but it's something that I would consider. But regardless, always Google their names. See what you can find. Again, the internet's a great place and you can find some really good information just by Googling a name. So again, that's one thing I would suggest you do. I think the last thing, and this is a really important thing that you should ask, not somebody else, but ask yourself, do you like selling? Do you like selling stuff to other people? So about the whole sales process, I know it can have a bad reputation in some people's minds. I get that. But let's think about what sales is. At the end of the day, sales is about helping people find solutions to their problems. Okay? I just told you what sales is really about. Sales is about helping people find solutions to their problems. Whether it's you're trying to get a new car, you're trying to find a new suit for your 30th high school reunion or whatever, the salesman is there to help you, help solve your problems. You have to ask yourself the question, do you like helping people find real, honest solutions to their problems? Are you comfortable talking to people even strangers. Are you comfortable talking to strangers? In sales, in the world of sales, you're going to be talking to a lot of people. Most of them are going to be people that you don't know. How do you feel about that? Are you a gregarious person? Do you like talking to people? Do you like helping people? Do you like sharing knowledge with people to better their lives? Really think about that. Because I think if the answer is yes, if you're like, yeah, I love talking to people, I love helping people, well, then you might do very well in the world of network marketing. If, on the other hand, you don't see yourself as a salesperson, well, then maybe it's not right for you. But either way, that's a conversation you have to have with yourself. And it is, I think, the biggest question and the most important question. Don't be swayed, by the pictures on social media of the expensive cars and the big homes and the vacations and all that stuff and the fancy clothes. They're there to get your attention. They're there to get your attention. But you really have to look beyond that. Is the product something you take yourself? Is it a product that you believe in? Is it a product that maybe you've had benefits with? Okay, that's a good sign. And again, are you comfortable talking with people about your experiences and about that product because you think that product will help enrich their lives? That's really what it's all about. It's about helping people at the end of the day. And if you can find a product that does all that and you're comfortable talking with, well, then again, you might do really well in this business model. So you got to do your own homework when it comes to this. Don't just listen to somebody who tells you it's great. Do your own homework. Ask them questions. Ask yourself questions. And if you ask the right questions, well, then that's going to give you a better idea of whether this home-based business model of multi-level marketing is going to be right for you. So hopefully that helped answer your questions. I know we deviate a little bit from what I normally talk about in this podcast. And again, if you're the first time you're joining me, again, I normally don't talk about multi-level marketing. I usually talk about health and fitness and wellness, but people are working from home a lot. And I've met multi-level marketers over the years, and some have told me good things, and some of them have told me not so good things. And again, it is quite possible that you may be faced with this. And if you look for information on the internet, you don't know who you're getting the information from. Sometimes the company or the distributors throw up websites that make it look like they're giving you an unbiased information. I got no dog in this fight. My goal is to help you. That's what I want to sell. That's my product. I sell knowledge. I want to help you. And so these questions I'm giving you here, my hope is they make your job a little easier if you're considering this. So if you need to get a hold of me, if you want to do a consult with me, you can either email me at supplementclarity.com. That's where I write about dietary supplements, or just simply joe-cannon.com. That's my personal website. Either way, you're going to get me really fast and, love to help you. With that, I'm going to bring this episode to a close, except for my one last piece of business this week, and that's the quote of the week. And this one comes from one of my favorite comedians, and he said, "Sometimes the road less traveled is less traveled for a reason." Jerry Seinfeld. Until next week, same bad time, same bad channel. I'm Joe Cannon. Go out, be safe, and where you can, try to make a difference.